with rational numbers. So basically what we're doing is we're taking an equation and we're plugging in values for our variables and solving. So an example of this type of a problem would be 8y plus xy divided by x plus 4. Now, it's all multiplied by z. And the values that were given are x equals -2, y equals 5, and z equals 1/3. Okay, so we need to do this problem step by step. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite my problem exactly how I have it, but I'm going to plug in my values of my variables. So I'm going to keep my brackets, and I'm going to say 8 times, and y is a -2, plus my x, oh sorry, I wrote the wrong thing for y. My y was actually a 5. Plus my x, which is a -2, times my y, which is a 5. And it's divided by my x, which is a -2, plus the 4. Okay, and that's the end of the bracket, times my z, and z is 1/3. Now, according to GEMDAS, I have to do what's in my brackets first. Okay, and so I'm going to solve according to GEMDAS, and I'm going to write it up here so I can remind myself of the steps. Have to do grouping symbols first. That means I have to do everything that's inside this piece as far as I can before I can multiply by the 1/3. So I'm going to write my bracket, and I have 8 times 5, which is 40, plus a -2 times a 5, which is -10, divided by -2 plus 4, which is a +2. And I multiply it still by that 1/3. And I'm going to keep going. I'm doing my grouping symbols right now, but inside my grouping symbols, I did my multiplication and my division piece, and now I'm working on my adding and subtracting piece. So 40 plus -10 is a +30, divided by that 2, times my 1/3. Still have something left in my grouping symbol to deal with. So 30 divided by 2 is really 15 times that 1/3. And now that I'm finished with it, and I've solved this piece down to a 15, I can take it out of the parenthesis. And so I end up with 15 over 1 times that 1/3. And I can find my equivalent forms of 1 by saying that 15 is really 5 times 3. And so I have a 3 divided by a 3, which makes a 1 for each. And 5 times 1 is what's left, so I get the answer of 5. So my answer for this expression is 5. And I'm going to do one more sample, which is x squared minus 4yz. And my x is equal to -3, my y is equal to 6, and my z is equal to -2/3. And I'm going to first start, I've written my original problem down. I'm going to plug in my values. So I'm going to say my x is a -3, and I have to square it, minus the 4 times, and the y is a 6. So I'm going to put it in parentheses just so I can keep it separate. And my z is a -2/3. Okay? Now, you don't have to put them in parentheses, but it helps, especially for this piece here, because if you don't put this in parentheses, you're going to get a different answer. Remember that -3 squared really means -1 times 3 times 3, which gives you a -9. But a -3 in parentheses squared means -3 times -3, which gives you a +9. So I go back to solving, and I have -3 squared. -3 times -3 gives me a +9. And according to GEMDAS, I do those exponents first. Minus my 4 times my 6 times my -2/3. And I'm going to just write it out because I want to make sure that I only do one step at a time. Now I cannot do the subtraction piece. I have to do the multiplication and division first. So I'm going to change my subtraction to addition and make that a -4 times a 6 times the -2/3. And now I'm going to say I'm going to combine my -4 and my 6, which is a -24 times that 2/3, which is also negative. Still can't do my 9 plus, so I'm going to write it. But now I'm going to combine -24 times 2/3, and I'm going to come over here off to the side and do it just so that I have a little extra workspace. And I know that when I'm multiplying, I also have to simplify. So 24 is really 3 times 8. And now I can cancel out my 3's. So I'm left with a negative times a negative, which makes my answer a positive. And 8 times 2 is 16. So I have a positive 9 plus a 16, which equals 25.